right, we are going to get started here today. This is our COVID-19 update, and this is part 2 of our conversation about kidney health. If you were not on last week on Thursday, you can always go to the website and check out part 1. But this is part 2 on our conversation around kidney health. My name is Dr. Valda Crowder. I'm an emergency medicine physician. I've been practicing for 30 years, also known as Dr. V. My Twitter, Instagram, and website is at the bottom there. We're going to be incorporating a lot of the wellness things that we're talking about as part of also our COVID update every single week. So, all right, let's get started. So we start off here with our slide presentation is basically 20 to 30 minutes. The first half is a COVID update. There's a few standard slides, and then there's a few things around what's actually occurring that has occurred in the last couple of days. And then we go into some a wellness topic. So specifically, we were asked about kidney health. Kidney health is a very broad topic, so it will be a 3-part series. And this is the second part. And then it's followed by Q&A for 30 to 35 minutes. Usually we end around 9 o'clock. You can put questions in the chat or the Q&A right now and anytime during this presentation. So you don't need to try to remember what you wanted to ask or anything like that. You can go ahead and put it in the Q&A or chat. All right, so intention is to keep participants informed with COVID-19 science that will help you and your family stay healthy during this pandemic. We've broadened our intention now to also include generalized wellness. And we're also motivated for you to create an action plan for yourself and your family. Really, you know, whether or not it's staying healthy against COVID or staying healthy against anything else, you really want to make sure that you have an action plan. And some people may also be creating an action plan for a broader community, like a church or a school or a business. All right, so globally, cases have gone up over 3 million. Cases have gone up over 154 million, with over 3.2 million deaths. In the United States, total cases are over 33 million. We're just shy of 600,000 people dying from COVID-19. COVID-19 deaths are accelerating. The world record, we've had sort of the world records recently for most ever cases in a single week. So even though, you know, we're seeing vaccination occurring in our country, we have to realize that other countries may not have the access. And also you have South America and other countries that are sort of heading into their winter. COVID-19 has hit the Amish community very hard, and vaccines are still a tough sell. So, you know, it's just one of the communities that also is struggling with, you know, reconciling their values with the vaccine and making decisions about how they want to actually live. So don't let your guard down. Wash your hands, mask, 6 feet apart. You know, it's important. COVID-19 is highly contagious. Minimum time of exposure is 45 seconds to infect others. The variants are less than that. They can be 15 to 20 seconds. Percent penetration, 60 to 80% of the people who come in contact with COVID-19 will get it. If it's the variants, you could be talking about 90 to 95%. So some of them are highly, highly, highly contagious. So we talked a little bit about how it actually gets into your body and replicates. The virus is inside of a fatty coating. The fatty coating has spike proteins. Now, this is really important. The typical virus has a single spike and then a single spike protein at the end of it. We are now seeing mutations with a double spike protein at the end of it, which is new. But that spike protein actually connects with the receptor protein, unlocks, gets into the cell, then it begins to replicate. It replicates the virus, it replicates the shell of the virus, the fatty shell, it replicates the spike proteins. And this happens in all of the trillions of cells that you have in your body. It reassembles and it goes out and infects another cell. And that happens multiple times in someone's body. So then when they get what we call a large enough viral load, so they have enough virus particles in their body to become sick, that's when you start seeing the symptoms, the shortness of breath, the weakness, the fatigue, maybe passing out, etc. Dr. Fauci says the best decision he made last year was really to invest in the vaccines. And really what they did was invested in every horse in the race. So, all the vaccine manufacturers, they actually invested in. And by invest, basically what it meant was pre-purchasing vaccines. So even some of the vaccines that we have not approved, like AstraZeneca, have been pre-purchased. So how do the vaccines work? Moderna and Pfizer are messenger RNA. It's coded for the spike protein. You get vaccinated, you produce the spike protein in your body. Your body recognizes the spike protein as foreign, and anything that your body recognizes as foreign, it then develops antibodies and attacks and kills it. So then when you see COVID-19 for real in the community, you're prepared. So this is why the second vaccine is giving people more problems than the first vaccine, because a lot of people by the first vaccine, they've developed the COVID-19 spike protein, and it has been recognized as foreign. So when it comes in that second time in that second vaccine, you're actually developing a stronger antibody reaction to it. Now, a lot of people have asked me, well, I don't really need to get it because I had COVID-19. So that's actually not true, because the antibody reaction that you have from actually getting the infection is very, very short-lived. This antibody reaction associated with the messenger RNA and the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is a much stronger and a longer lasting antibody protection. So Johnson & Johnson is a viral vector approach, and it's basically the common cold, altered to become harmless, combined with genetic material, and then teaches the body to generate antibodies that attack the COVID-19 spike protein so the virus can attach and COVID-19 is rendered harmless. So just a little bit about some of the vaccines. So right now we have Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson, which was reinstated recently. All of them are 2 shots except for Johnson & Johnson, which is 1 shot. The Janssen shot, Janssen is owned by Janssen owns Johnson & Johnson, and Janssen is a 2-dose study of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. I doubt that we will see the AstraZeneca vaccine approved in the United States. There were a lot of problems with the study design, and I do not think that that will actually be approved. One that we actually will see upcoming will be Novavax. I think that Novavax will submit for emergency use authorization. It is also a 2-shot regimen, 21 days apart, similar to the Pfizer vaccine. Now, so as we said, Johnson & Johnson earlier recommended a pause so they could train physicians about what to look for regarding these clots that are treated very differently, and it's now cleared the way for its use in states. People always ask me, which shot is better? Well, this came out from Canada actually today. And Canada actually said, at least according to their studies, that they are stating that the messenger RNA vaccines are preferred, but the Johnson & Johnson can be offered to adults that are 30 years or older. Again, there are some people who really don't want to come back for a second shot. There are some people who, for whatever reason, cannot come back for a second shot. They don't have a stable housing situation. They may be traveling too much. They're just not people who actually want to have a follow-up and go to an appointment. It's maybe very difficult for them to actually, they're not used to going to doctor's appointments or getting things done, or maybe they just decide, well, I'm going to get a shot, but I'm just going to get one. So this just kind of tells you a little bit about what Canada is saying. So Canada is saying the messenger RNA vaccines are preferred. Now, this is the exciting news. The FDA is preparing to expand authorization for the use of Pfizer for children 12 to 15 years old. This will actually open up millions of young Americans to the vaccine. And I think this is really the key to actually opening up schools safely. I think it's near impossible to really open up schools safely without children actually being able to be vaccinated. I would not. I would. I would expect that we will see the FDA. The FDA approves Pfizer for children probably in the next 2 to 3 weeks, and that would be very exciting. So one of the things that we're seeing, and one of the things that I'm noticing in the emergency department when I work, is that I'm seeing younger and younger patients that I'm having to admit because of COVID-19. So children now account for 22% of new US COVID cases. And I believe this is partially because some states decide to reopen in-person school a little earlier than they probably should. So right now, about 22% of our cases are actually pediatric cases. So this is really important because I have a lot of people ask me about, well, since I have got the COVID vaccine, I'm good. So, your risk of getting COVID is not just your vaccination status. It's also how much COVID is there in the community. The COVID in the community, is it variants or is it mutations? There's a lot of things that actually go into this. Also, too, I have heard of, and I think I've seen as of this week, one case where someone was vaccinated, but because of their extreme amount of risk factors, they still became symptomatic and required hospitalization. I have not had anyone who has actually been vaccinated who has actually had to go to the ICU. As we talk, they're saying that, Pfizer and Moderna are both working on a third vaccine. Now, it says as immunity wanes, and I want to really want to clarify that. It's a little bit more, I'm not sure if it's immunity waning. I think it's more of the fact that we have so many mutations. And as a mutation comes out that's stronger or more infectious or causes more severe illness, it begins to take over and dominate. And the issue is, does the vaccine actually cover the mutation? So I think we're seeing additional shots more related to mutations. All right, so I wanted to just talk briefly about India, because India plays an important role in every pandemic we've ever had, including smallpox. India was one of the countries where the last smallpox case was identified. And smallpox was still prevalent and occurring up until the 20th century. So I want to actually really go over India, because I think India really tells a story of how we as a world get over this. So goes India, so goes the rest of us. So as we know, the cases there have been really skyrocketing. And, I think it's important to look at what's actually been occurring, because they are beginning to crack down in certain ways. So now, one, as I said, there are double and triple mutant variants that we are seeing in India because the amount of infection is so rampant. These mutations now can circle back around the globe all over again. So these are the way viruses stay alive and keep themselves moving. The crushing caseload was basically a perfect storm of different factors. One was the president declared himself a success, in that they had successfully crushed COVID-19 significantly too early. In addition, they opened back up with very large weddings. As I said, religious ceremonies always play an important role in pandemics, and particularly the spread of disease. And religious ceremonies opened back up. And it was just a perfect storm of a lot of different things. There have been a lot of threats to medical professionals about talking about the Indian oxygen crisis. I think in general, in our healthcare system and also in other areas, people feel a little reticent to talk about what the problem is. And you can't really solve the problem until you talk about the problem, no matter what the problem is. So They there have a significant oxygen shortage. Countries from around the globe, including the United States, have been sending them oxygen. This just happened recently. A New Delhi court threatened to punish Indian government officials if they fail to deliver oxygen to hospitals overwhelmed by COVID-19 cases. So we're seeing the court system there step in. So you can kind of see how, a pandemic really stresses and strains all types of systems when it actually, goes through a community. You're vaccinated. So now what? What can you actually do? So vaccinated Americans do not need to actually mask outdoors. And you also can actually meet in small groups outdoors. You want to have an outdoor dinner party, I think it's 6 or less. This is actually really great. I've been taking my mask off when I get out of the car. It actually is kind of refreshing. So that's one thing that is making a difference. There are schools and universities and colleges that are going to require the COVID vaccine moving forward in the fall. So it is something that will be required for matriculation into these particular schools. And we will keep a running list of this, and I'm sure this list will actually expand. When are you fully vaccinated? You are fully vaccinated after your last shot. Whether or not it's a 1 week or 2 week regimen, you are fully vaccinated after your last shot. What precautions do you still need to take? You still need to actually stay 6 feet away from people that you do not live with, avoid medium and large size in-person gatherings, get tested if you have symptoms, and also follow the guidance regarding travel and your individual employer, and wear a well-fitted mask. I always think it's important. What are the doctors doing? And it's funny, I'm in this category as well. So Dr. Fauci is fully vaccinated, and he said he will not eat inside of a restaurant. I'm similarly, I have not eaten inside of a restaurant. We have some restaurants in DC that are indoor, outdoors, where part of the restaurant is, a wall of the restaurant is sort of like a gate that opens up to the outdoors. I will go into those types of restaurants, but anything that is completely enclosed, I have not been going into indoor restaurants. We have vaccinated 246 million people. And today, President Biden said he wants to have 70% of Americans to have had their first shot by July 4th. And the goal is that America gets to actually celebrate its Independence Day being independent of COVID. And I think that's really great. I think that's something to really, really look forward to. And I'm actually, currently we have vaccinated at least 56% of the United States adult population has gotten one shot. And he wants to get that to 70% so we can really celebrate being free, truly free of, or getting there, of COVID. Unvaccinated folks right now are the ones who are driving the coronavirus surges. That's who we're actually seeing, those people who did not get vaccinated. I remind everyone, I took the slides out, but I remind everyone, if you have unvaccinated friends that get sick, please, please, please encourage them to see if they actually qualify for monoclonal antibodies. That is the one thing that will make a difference and actually prevent COVID-19 deaths of those that are not vaccinated. About a quarter of adults say they will not even try to get the COVID-19 vaccine. And so again, we hope that number continues to go down. That's where we're at right now. But over time, when people decide they want to get back to their regular life, or they want to go on a cruise, or they want to go on a vacation, I think minds will change. There are incentives all over the country, and these are just some of them. There's even breweries that are doing a shots and a chaser if you get COVID vaccine, if you get COVID vaccinated. So I just wanted to share, you've got joints for jabs, a Krispy Kreme free donut. You've got all sorts of things that you can actually get with getting vaccinated or helping others get vaccinated. So how do you talk to friends and family that are hesitant to get vaccinated? So one, encourage them to talk with their doctor, remind them that they're qualified people have actually studied the vaccine. and also that medical professionals stand by it. I often remind people that, there may be some side effects from the vaccine, but COVID-19 illness is way, way worse. A lot of people say, well, I know I'm not going to get the vaccine. I know I'm not going to get COVID-19. And it's just shocking to me how confident people are that they will not catch this, when this is really, COVID-19 is all over the place. It's actually going to be very hard not to catch it pretty soon. And so the other thing to point out is that you're protecting others. And it's one way to get back to society and back to your normal life quicker. Herd immunity in the US could be around the corner. This is what we have been talking about since February of 2020. The issue is, though, this will be a little bit of a long-term battle as mutations travel around the world and variants travel around the world, until we actually really get a handle on getting the worldwide human race vaccinated and inoculated for COVID-19. All right, so we're going to switch over to wellness, and this is part 2 of our kidney talk. So we went over in part 1 a little bit about what the kidneys do, where they are in your body. We also talked a little bit about how they function and what does it begin to look like when your kidneys are not functioning. So I want to just go over a couple of things. One is, let's start with how is kidney disease actually diagnosed? So there is a thing called blood urea nitrogen, which we began to talk about last week, and I didn't really go completely into it, and I want to actually talk about it with a little bit more detail. This is the amount of urea nitrogen in your blood. Urea nitrogen is a waste product that is created when your liver breaks down proteins. So let's say you eat a steak or you have a piece of chicken. Blood urea nitrogen, or urea nitrogen, is a waste product that is produced in your liver. It is poisonous. It travels through your blood plasma, and your kidneys filter it out of your blood and actually store it in your urine. So then when you go urinate, you actually urinate out urea nitrogen in your urine. So one of the things that is important is as your kidneys begin to actually struggle, that filtration piece is the piece that actually begins to slow down, and that's why you will see a backup or an increase of the blood urea nitrogen. Now, the other thing which is important is creatinine. Creatinine is very, very, very important. I would say even maybe a little bit more important than blood urea nitrogen. Creatinine is a chemical waste product that actually is produced when your muscles actually metabolize or are involved in developing, taking food into energy. When your kidneys function normally, they filter the creatinine out of your blood, and again, it goes into your urine. So this is something else that backs up when your kidneys are not actually working and functioning properly. So what we look at, I know we talked a little bit about how do we know if it's pre-renal or renal or post-renal. So one of the things that is really, really important to look at is what we call the BUN to creatinine ratio. And it is literally a lab test that takes your serum BUN and divides it by your serum creatinine. So if you ever went to the doctor and you got a chemistry, they may say, oh, we need to get some chemistries. That's usually what they'll say. They are getting these numbers. So if you divide your BUN by your creatinine, it should normally be 12 to 20, with 15 being optimum. If it's low, you have things going on like starvation, you're not even eating any proteins. You could have liver disease, low protein intake, or acute tubular necrosis. If it's high, then you might have things like, which means you have more BUN than creatinine, then you could have like dehydration, eating too much protein, or sometimes you'll also see it after someone has a GI bleed. If you have a high BUN creatinine ratio with an increased creatinine, that's when we see either post-renal obstruction or pre-renal uremia with renal disease. So this is how we as physicians actually know or it sends us in a direction of what to actually look for. So we get this BUN and creatinine, and then we look at the BUN creatinine ratio, and that kind of tells us, well, what kind of category of kidney disease are we actually talking about? So this kind of sends you down a particular route. The other thing that we actually look at is your glomerular filtration rate, also known as GFR, which is much easier to pronounce than glomerular. So this is a blood test that checks how well is or another one that checks how well are your kidneys working. So what happens is, and the picture you have here is Bowman's capsule. That's the blue capsule that you kind of see. The brownish is the small blood vessels at the very end, like when you go from, the very end of the blood vessel and how it turns the blood around there. So this actually brings the blood into your Bowman's capsule, and it literally filters and removes waste and excess fluid from your blood. It actually works as a filter. So your GFR tests how much blood passes through this filter each minute. So it's a rate. Think of it almost like a pump, but it's a rate. So normally your GFR is 90 to 125 milliliters per minute. So when you get the chemistries, there's also something that says, what is your GFR? And they do calculate GFR for African Americans. There's a number that is a little bit different than there is for non-African Americans. And we can talk about that during the Q&A if you have any questions about that. So a normal GFR is 90 to 125 milliliters per minute. So now let's talk about what we actually talked about, the different stages. So someone that is in stage 1, they have a GFR that's still 100 or above. Somebody who's in stage 2, they've got about a third of their GFR. They've got about a third of their GFR, or 25 to 30% of their GFR gone. So they may have a GFR of 60, 70, 80. Stage 3, you're going to see people who have a GFR closer to 40, 50. Stage 4, you're going to have people who have a GFR that's closer to 20, 25. And then stage 5 is when your GFR is like less than 20. So these percentages are the percentages of normal kidney function. Those numbers are not GFR. You would multiply those numbers times the GFR, and that is the GFR that a patient would actually have for each one of those stages 1 through 5 of kidney disease. So what happens when you get to stage 5? So we've talked about this, and this is dialysis. And this is something that kind of does what a healthy kidney does when your own kidneys can no longer do it. So basically, it actually takes your blood and it filters your blood for you and then places it back into your body. So that is basically what dialysis or dialysis treatment does. And that's why it is really, really critical for people who have chronic renal failure or stage 5 renal failure, because these toxins build up in your body and they will kill you. So it is important that your blood actually gets filtered. Now, there's 2 types of dialysis. Hemodialysis, which is actually through a shunt in your arm. The shunt can also be in your leg, but most people have it in their arm. Then you are hooked up to a filtration machine. It draws the blood from the body, cleans it, and then places it back into the person's body. That normally is done about 3 days a week. You're either usually on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday schedule. And when you go in for dialysis, that can take about 3 hours. Then there's peritoneal dialysis, which often people do at home. They literally do dialysis in their abdomen, but not in their colon or small bowel. It's in the spaces that are around all of your colon and small bowel. So there's dialysate fluid that they have at home. They put it in their belly and they exchange it, and it stays in there, and it kind of filters everything, and then they drain it. This will often have to be done a little bit more frequently, but it can be done at home. Someone doesn't have to necessarily go out to a dialysis center. For some people in their lifestyle, it actually works a little bit better. So when is dialysis needed? So it's end-stage kidney failure, usually when you've lost about 90% of your kidney function, and you normally have a GFR, or glomerular filtration rate, that is less than 15 or 20. What does it do? As I said, it removes waste, salt, extra water to prevent extra water from building up. And it also keeps certain levels of chemicals in your body like potassium, sodium, and bicarbonate at a normal level. It also helps control your blood pressure, because obviously as waste build up, the other thing that happens is fluid builds up, your body goes into sort of a fluid overload, and your blood pressure goes up. Now, how long does dialysis treatment last? It really depends upon how well your kidneys work. It depends upon how much weight you've gained in between treatments. So you'll often see with dialysis, they will weigh you before and after treatment. Sometimes if they have to pull extra fluid off, it could last longer. Some people can't tolerate it as much, so it lasts not quite as long. But each treatment is roughly 3 to 4 hours, and it's done roughly 3 times a week. So that is basically what dialysis actually looks like. And it's usually done through what we call an arterial venous shunt, and a surgeon will actually put a shunt usually in your arm. Now, let's talk about kidney transplant, okay? This is actually where they actually place a healthy kidney, either from a living or deceased donor, into a person whose kidney is not functioning properly. Now, what a lot of people actually don't realize is that what happens is, so the person on the left there is the person that's actually giving their kidney. The person on the right is the person that actually has end stage or near end stage kidney failure. What a lot of people don't realize is if you have kidney failure and you get a transplant, they don't take the old kidneys out. The old kidneys that are not functioning stay there. So what they usually do is they usually place another kidney down a little bit lower that is actually fairly close to your bladder. That is actually the location of where you will actually have a transplanted kidney with the old kidneys actually staying in. Now, what makes someone a good transplant candidate? Usually younger than 80 years old, not too overweight, decent overall health. It's important to have a permanent residence because there is a lot of follow-up that's actually needed for this. You want to have someone that's responsible, that can actually, go to their appointments, take their medications. They've got some support systems. It's important that their heart is healthy because that's required for the surgery, and that they actually live close to a transplant center. Many people are considered for transplant when they get to about stage 4. That's kind of so there are some people who actually get a transplant and actually may never actually have gotten on dialysis. And some people get on dialysis and then get a transplant. It just depends upon if they're able to find a match, or if you're able to find a match. So let's look at kidney donation statistics, because this is kind of interesting. Every 10 minutes, another person is added to the national transplant waiting list. Every 10 minutes. 82% of patients are waiting for a kidney. So the kidney is the most common organ that is transplanted. Most people wait 3 to 5 years for a kidney from a deceased donor. Kidney transplant is used to treat kidney failure and also what we call ESRD, which is end-stage renal disease. With living donation, a patient normally receives a transplant in less than 3 to 5 years. So if you can find a living donation, that actually usually is faster. Generally, living donors will have to have a full medical exam and must be at least 18 years old and good health. So what's kind of the difference between a living donor and a cadaver transplant? So first of all, it is exactly what you think. Living donor is someone alive that decides to donate their kidneys to a family member or friend, or maybe even just they've decided just to actually donate a kidney. Cadaver transplant is someone who is deceased. So let me start first with a live donor. The graft survival and acute rejection is much better. The compatibility is better. There is a single organ donation possibility. In other words, you can only donate one, obviously. And there is some risk or loss to the donor present. And you know, one of the things that we're seeing in other countries, this is not allowed in the United States, but there's commercial trading of organs. There are people who actually go and when they say commercial trading, they actually mean for money. So there are some, you know, people in poor countries that decide they need some money and donate a kidney. We do not allow that here in the United States, but that is done in other countries. Cadaver is the graft survival and the rejection. The graft survival is less and the rejection occurs more frequently. There's not as much compatibility. There's no risk, obviously, to the donor. And there's multiple organ donation feasibility, right? So in a cadaver, you can actually, with one person, take out 2 organs. And you don't have the commercial trading. So, and it can be a mass activity. So these are things you see sort of with living versus cadaver transplants. Now, I get this question all the time. What happens to my kidney function if I give someone my kidney? So overall, what happens is your kidney function will decrease slightly after surgery, but the remaining kidney grows and eventually provides 70 to 80% of the donor's original kidney function. So it's really, really important. You have to realize, you know, we actually were really born with almost like an extra kidney. And so, and kidneys have the ability to kind of regenerate. So what happens is it actually will grow and you'll get back to about 80% functionality. So you won't notice anything. A couple of myths. Kidney disease is rare. That's not true. Kidney disease is actually the 9th leading cause of death in the United States. There's nothing that can be done about kidney disease. That is not true. Everybody knows I'm an advocate for having an action plan. Most things are diabetes and high blood pressure cause nearly 75% of all kidney failure. So those are things you can directly do something about. And one of the things we're going to talk about next is hypertension. You'd know it if you have kidney disease. Not true. Most kidney disease really has no symptoms at all until you actually get into the later stages. That's why it's really important to get your annual physical and to actually get your physician to check chemistries. Dialysis is not a cure. It's really just a temporizing thing. And then kidney stones cause kidney disease. Kidney stones can cause kidney disease, but it is not a common cause. The most common, again, is diabetes and hypertension.